Hi, welcome back to my channel. My name is Jaden, and today I'm going to be telling you about my reads that I read in April. I read 12 books in April, so the first one I read was Where He Can't Find You, and I rated this one a 3.5 stars. It gave me vibes and a mixture of It, the book by Stephen King, and Frankenstein, by Mary Shelley. It just gave me those vibes, and it felt like a mixture of both of those books, just because of the history and the backstory of the town and what ended up being the monster. It just felt like a good mixture of those two, and I really liked that. What I didn't like is that some of these characters in the book made stupid decisions, especially in the last 30 pages, not chapters, the last 30 pages, and you're like, why are you being so stupid? This book would also change perspectives of the different characters and randomly in chapters, and it just annoyed the ever-loving hell out of me. So like they would have a chapter and it'd be like, this is so-and-so's chapter, and it would tell a story about them, and then halfway through it'd be changed to somebody else's perspective, and it was really annoying. I did not like that. It was really annoying. But other than that, the book had really good imagery when they would describe stuff. And I remember this was my own book, so I was able to like highlight and underline and write notes in the margins of things that I liked in this book. So like, oh, good imagery. Oh, I really like this line. Oh, this is really fascinating. So I did a lot of that with this book because of the imagery and just little things that remind me of other books that I've read. This book also has a couple of illustrations in it, and I really like that because it showed what the author intended certain characters to look like, and I liked having those. That way I could imagine what those characters look like by the illustrations and not by my own imagination. After that, we have Song of Achilles. I rated this one 4.5. So I was recommended this by a cashier at my local county market because I was talking about the feeling of falling in love. And she's like, oh, if you like that one, then you should try reading Song of Achilles. And I'm like, okay, I heard about Song of Achilles, but I'm like, I'll give it a try. So I read Song of Achilles. It's so good. I understand the hype about Song of Achilles. I loved the relationship and the Greek mythology retelling. Odysseus is an asshole in every iteration I've read of Greek mythology or Roman mythology. He's just an asshole in all of them. Sometimes there were a little too many characters to keep track of. Sometimes, but I was able to focus and know which one is which. I love that Achilles hid as a woman to avoid going to war for a couple chapters. That was cute. I didn't know who Patroclus was until I read this book. But now I'm more interested in his and Achilles' story because they were so cute together. I loved having them together. And I love their story. I like the change in Achilles' death in this book compared to the retelling that, of how, he died through, the Achilles tendon. That's why we name it. But this one, I believe he was struck through the chest. So I liked that. I also liked how in the book we're thinking, oh, Achilles is going to die first. Achilles is going to die first. And it turns out it was Patroclus who died first. So I like that change. There was the POV change after Patroclus died that went to Achilles or third person after Patroclus died. So that was a little weird for me because most of the time we were following Patroclus and then he died. So we were following Achilles afterwards. So that was a little weird for me. But other than that, it was a really, really good book. I understand the hype about the Song of Achilles. I understand it now. After that, I read The Bad Ones. I rated this one 3 stars. The book was okay. Nora and Becca are BFFs, so to me, a couple times they gave off like ex-lovers vibes. A story was confusing sometimes, but it was confusing sometimes. So I did have to reread what I was reading to make sure I was understanding, making sure I knew what was going on. The goddess story was good, but it felt a little weird and off, especially as it came in like the last third of the book. I would have liked it if it was more spread out throughout the book instead of just the last third. It was a good story, but it had a lot of unanswered questions, and I don't like my books if they have unanswered questions at the end. Alright. After that, I read Bride. I rated this one at 4.5. This was the other book that the cashier in my county market recommended. This was my first Ali Hazelwood book, and I understand the hype about Ali Hazelwood. This was a really good book. I got sucked in the past, first few pages, and I finished this book in, less than a day because I was sucked in so much. I heard this book had smut. I'm not the biggest fan of smut, so I was kind of worried, but it wasn't as bad as I thought it was going to be. It went on a little long for me, but I didn't care for it. A couple times I tried to skim through it. I don't care for smut, but it was okay. There was a joke about hardware and software, that it's a joke, and then it gets mentioned a couple times. I thought that was repetitive, and I'm like, okay, I get the joke. You can stop talking about hardware and software. I get it. But I really like this book. It makes me want to read more Ali Hazelwood books because I really liked these characters. I really liked the book. Will I? I don't know. I've heard some iffy things about some of the other Ali Hazelwood books, but we'll see. I would read this book again. I would just skip over the smut parts, because I'm not the biggest fan of smut. After that, I read Not Dead Enough. I rated this one 4 stars. So the first few pages of this book sucked me in, with how the book portrayed the main character's anxiety. I liked how it portrayed it in the book, and I liked how this book portrayed texting as well, and how they did that. I really liked that. I didn't like Charlotte's parents in this book. I felt like they were gaslighting her a lot and not listening to her, especially about her PTSD and the stuff that was happening around her, and they just wouldn't listen to her. And you would think with someone who has PTSD after what happened to her parents would listen to her, and they don't, and so I hated her parents. The whodunit in this story was cliche, and I guessed it halfway through the book. This book has similar themes and ideas and whodunit to Truly Madly Deadly, which I believe I read last month. But this book was better. And I looked, and there's a 4-book difference from when I read Truly Madly Deadly to this book, and this book was way better. The story, the trauma the main characters go to, the whodunit between this book and Truly Madly Deadly are very similar, but this book was way done better. I like this book way more than the other one. After that, I read 5 Bad Deeds. I rated this one 1.5. I hated this book. I wanted to DNF this book so much because I didn't care. I wanted to DNF at the first few pages, but I haven't DNF'd a book yet, and so I wasn't going to. But I wanted to with this book. I really wanted to DNF this book. The book was too slow for me. I could not get invested in any of the characters to care enough. I just did not care. There were too many characters introduced in the first few pages. And then all of them have their own chapters and their own perspectives, which is way too many, and I never cared enough. There are 7+ characters, and they each have their own perspectives and their own chapters, and they just randomly appear. I hated it. I didn't care. I'm why does this person have a chapter? Why does this person have a chapter? Why does this one have a chapter? I just didn't care. I didn't care. I had to push through this book to finish it because I didn't care. I wanted to DNF it so much. If I could go back in time, I would not read this book. I would not, because I hated it. I hated it so much. After that, I read Only If You're Lucky, and I rated this one a 4.5 stars. It had great characters, and I was sucked into the story. I was sucked in so much that I finished this book in a day and a half. Great story and characters. I had this book in my TBR for a while, and it was worth the wait. I just wouldn't read it again. After this, I read Circe, which is another Madeline Miller book. I think I got a little into Greek mythology this month. That will be apparent later on, too. So I loved getting a backstory for Circe. The beginning was a little slow for me, but once I read more, I was able to be sucked in. When Odysseus finally gets to Circe's island, after I read that part, I had to go listen to Epic the Musical Circe Saga just to listen to the songs and be like, hey, I know this reference. Oh, I know this reference. Oh, I know this reference. I love the mythology. I love the characters, especially when they would mention other characters from other mythology retellings. So like Icarus, Eridina. I don't know if I pronounced that right. Odysseus, the Minotaur, Achilles, which is like a reference to Song of Achilles. And like this Odysseus, like I'm pretty sure it's the same character from Song of Achilles, and I did not like the Odysseus in Song of Achilles, but he wasn't as assholey in Circe compared to Song of Achilles. Maybe it was just the way I pictured him, and he was more sympathetic in this one compared to Song of Achilles. I didn't care that Circe ends up with Odysseus' son at the end, which is kind of common for like Greek mythologies for people to, you know, be attracted to relatives or get with like relatives of some kind. I just didn't like it because like she slept with Odysseus and then she like slept with his son, and I didn't like that. I shouldn't be surprised, but I was. But other than that, it was a really good book. After that, I read Secret Invasion, Infiltration. If you've seen my January and February reads video, you'll think it's the same book. But that one was Secret Invasion. This one was Secret Invasion, Infiltration. So it goes to the Infiltration storyline. So there were a couple of similar comics that were in both books. So this one, I just kind of skimmed the ones I had already read. I was intrigued by the premise and the characters. There were a couple of times I was confused with what was going on, especially with Spider-Woman and Echo at the end. If they were Skrulls, I would need to read more of the series to find out. Overall, it was a really good read, and it was a graphic novel, so I was able to get it done with. After that, I read Malibu Rising. This one has been on my TBR for a while, and it was worth the wait. I loved how short the chapters are. I love short chapters. And the characters, especially Nina, I could relate to her so much as an oldest daughter, and having the feeling of having to have the weight of the world on your shoulders. I loved learning about Mick and June's story, who are Nina's parents. There were a couple of times I was more intrigued by their story than the actual plot of the story, but Mick and June's story does come around to the current story, so it is a good subplot, it is a good story, and it does come around to the main. So it was very important, and I really, really liked that. I finished this book in like a day. I would read this again. It was a really good book. It was definitely worth the wait. After that, I read I Will Follow, and I rated this one 3.5 stars. It had an interesting premise, and it was a quick read. The cops in it were annoying, and I didn't think they were doing their job correctly. I didn't care for Nora, who was one of the main characters. The book abruptly ends. Didn't like that. And I felt like I needed to be longer to answer questions, because this book was only like 261 pages. So it was a short read, but I felt like I needed to know more. I needed questions answered, and I'm not going to get those questions answered. Having a TikToker being Nora's obsession, a main catalyst for the story was kind of weird for me. It kind of drew me in, but it's also kind of weird. It was the okay overall story. And then the last book I read in April was Icarus. Again, another Greek retelling. I was really into Greek retellings this month. I rated this one 5 stars. I really love the characters, especially Icarus and Halos. Especially the relationship. There were a couple of times that I audibly gasped or made commentary with what Halo said to Icarus, and I just loved them. They were so cute together. I really love the short chapters. I love short chapters. I love the new retelling of it, especially like modern times. Really loved that. I didn't like how it ended semi-abruptly, but I was okay with it. And I would definitely read this again. So those were my reads in April. If you have any recommendations or have any books you want me to read in May or June, let me know down below. And yeah, I'll see you next month. Bye.